Maggie, nice to see you again.
Great to see you too.
What a crazy year it's been since we've talked.
Yeah, it's definitely been a crazy year. I made a whole record in that year.
You made a whole record. You're going on tour with Mumford & Sons. You did Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. Crazy year.
I could tell, I can tell you're reacting to me saying it back to you. It seems like it's hard to believe.
Yeah, we're in the realm of like dreams you don't say out loud. You know, all of my goals that I had for like my music career, I kind of hit on the EP. And so now I'm sort of like, well, this is crazy. You know, SNL is like one of those things where you grow up being like, yeah, that'd be cool, but you're not going to like write down on your like third grade paper, like my dream is to play SNL, because it's too crazy.
Yeah.
So that happened.
They say it's a scary thing, right? And something I've experienced as well. When you reach your goals, that moment of, well, what now?
The good news is I've heard from all my friends that everything I'm experiencing is also very age appropriate.
How old are you now?
I'm 24.
Okay.
And so everyone has sort of said, my friends are all going through this like, oh man, now what? Kind of like first job after college, settled in adulthood, but like figuring out real life goals. And I'm definitely doing that with my career as well, because as far as like shows I'm getting to play or musicians I'm getting to collaborate with or things like SNL, like we're way past my wildest dreams, which is exciting because I think it means that I can just really focus on the work here on out.
Well, that's what it is. You know, I think once you meet goals that aren't based on the work, I mean, that are definitely, you know, in some ways based on the work.
Yeah, but there's reception goals.
When you meet reception goals, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Then there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah. Well, the reception thing is funny because I really make music as my own way to experience the world or sort of talk about how I experience the world. Or I've always thought about albums as a way to like a record of a period of time.
Well, that's why they're called records.
Right. And so, but there's concept records and some people create characters, but I write very autobiographically. It's a way of cataloging. The reception thing is funny because, I mean, even coming in here, I saw this, like, the cheesiest, I didn't realize my, like, record label is handing out, like, Christmas ornaments with my name on it to radio stations.
Oh, yeah?
And it makes me, like, nauseous because I'm just sort of like, if you like my music and you want to play it, that's great. And if you don't want to play it, that's okay, too. I'm sure there's plenty of music people will like. I guess it doesn't really sell records, but that's kind of my attitude.
Well, I'm struggling a little bit with what you're saying there because I also think that you make the music that you want to make, and just by chance we all just really like it, and that's meaningful too.
And that's amazing. I think it's the commercialization of it I sometimes have a hard time with.
Oh, for sure.
But I definitely agree. I mean, one of the biggest privileges of being a musician is getting the chance to be a part of people's lives in this intimate way. And I think one of the reasons I definitely make and play music is to connect to people and to bring people together, to create community. Is
it ever a little funny, since you write so autobiographically about things that you're dealing with in your life or relationships that you're having or just thoughts that you're having, to see a complete stranger singing them back to you?
That is definitely crazy. But there's this other process that happens where as soon as you make something and you put it out into the world, it no longer belongs to you.
Now, that you're not the first person to say that to me, but I find there's two camps on that. Artists that I speak to either say, no, they're still my songs, people are welcome to them. And other people say, no, once it gets out there and once it goes to those people, it's not mine anymore.
I don't think it's mine anymore because I think my issue with the first camp is that where did it come from in the first place? Like, it came from you, but like also music is this thing that like you can't see it and it didn't exist before you made it, which is why I think I love the like magic of making things in the first place. But I think if you write a song that is truly about your life and the humanity of your life or your real human experience, like the more vulnerable you can be, the more human you're actually being. Like if you can describe your experience in as simple terms as possible, which is why I love pop music, it ends up being everyone's story, not just yours.
You love pop music because it's a way of very simply, you have no choice but to very simply describe sometimes complex emotions.
Well, there's a lot of bad pop music, I think I should say. But the best, like there's a lot of of songs that try and do that. But like when I think about like the perfect pop song, like the Beatles, like I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yeah.
So simple, and
Yeah.
everyone can relate to it, and that is like a perfect pop song.
Yeah. I've been spending a lot of time sitting down with the guitar, kind of deconstructing those songs. Like I started playing "She Loves You" really slowly,
Yeah.
and it's
Just
so
break your heart.
perfect.
Another one of my favorites is Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
If you slow that song down, it is so sad.
I know. Some people use that and it gets on my nerves. Sometimes I feel like
What do you mean? Use what?
Sometimes when I go to like the Spotify acoustic covers playlist just for a laugh, you know?
Yeah. For a laugh.
So there
It could be for some personal enjoyment.
No, this is for me,
I see.
for a laugh, just to see what's going on.
Okay, I see.
And sometimes I'll see like a cover of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like Crazy by Gnarls Barkley.
Yeah. Oh,
As
thank you very
done
much.
By Soft Ukulele.
Oh, I could not agree
And a
with you more.
children's choir.
Yeah, Crazy Town's Butterfly,
Oh my God.
done on hammered dulcimer, whispered. Come, my lady, come, my lady.
Oh God.
You're my butterfly, sugar baby. I'm like, I
Makes
don't know.
my skin crawl.
So that's maybe that. So anyway.
That is like kind of a holiday special, also, right?
Oh God, is it ever? You can tell it's this time of year because I'm getting real honest about it. I want to talk about your song. I want to talk about Light On because I like it so much.
Oh man, thank you.
What can you tell me about it? Where were you when you wrote it?
I was in Los Angeles when I wrote it. It was the very last song I wrote for this record. I thought this record was done like 6 times. And then I kept going back to the track list and being like, I think I can beat this song.
Mm-hmm.
And kept going back. I guess I should start by saying the EP I made is largely about like the last 2 or 3 months of college for me. And then it was important when I went to write this record that to talk about everything that happened afterwards, which is mostly this giant change in my life where my very private life as a student became very public very quickly and very much out of my control. And I really struggled with it at first. I found myself really overwhelmed and kind of scared, and there were a lot of expectations about who I would be and who I would become, and I had to kind of figure out how to do it in a way that felt like me and that felt like it was on my own terms. So this record, largely, it's sort of the first time I get to introduce myself on my own terms.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells the story of those 2 years, and different songs sort of zoom in and talk about one scenario or one emotion. But why Light On feels so important, particularly, is it tells the whole story in one song. It feels like a thesis statement.
The whole story of what? The whole story of you reintroducing yourself? The whole story of you
The whole story of those like 2 years of just like, and even it's written, I wrote it as a letter to my audience. So the you in the song is my fans. Or it could be you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's anyone I'm talking to about my life. Would you believe me now if I told you I got caught up in a wave? Almost gave it away. It's like, that's the whole thing.
But also the emotion of I couldn't stop it. I couldn't slow it all down.
Yeah, and having to figure it out, and just like it always, as soon as I felt like I figured it out, it got more intense. That's kind of what Falling Water is about. But I think that's also what just life is about. But the takeaway from Light On is, even though this was all so hard, the record also is me kind of saying, not even kind of, it is me definitely saying, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to do this. And I think that's the thing mostly, is that I'm finally feel ready for this. And the chorus of Light On sort of says, like, I know I had a hard time and I wasn't always great about it, and I needed some time to process, and then I went away for a sec. But if you're still there for me, then I'm here, and I'm going to do this.
I also like in the song how you sort of open up the window into what it's actually like to be you in these moments. Because I think, up until maybe now, we had this sort of idyllic idea of fame. And when you started getting a little bit famous based on your music, there was something gauche, or you were worried about seeming ungrateful by complaining about it.
Totally.
But more and more people like you, and even, like we had Shawn Mendes in, he was talking about this. What's his name from One Direction? Niall Horan from One Direction.
With everyone around, crying in the bathroom, had to figure it out, with everyone around me saying, you must be so happy now.
Everyone around me saying, you must be so happy now.
It's the first song I put out where I was like, I'm kind of nervous about it's like so honest. I was kind of nervous because I am so grateful and I had this crazy opportunity, but it was like I felt also, I'm not in a band. I felt super alienated from my friends, and I was also the only one experiencing this. And I think like a lot of like it's super normal in some ways, like graduate from college, move to a new town where you don't know anyone, start a new job where you don't know anyone, and you figure it out.
Yeah.
And so touring was that constant new town. Music was that new job, and I didn't know any other musicians who were professional musicians, and I had to build a community. But I found such incredible friends who have become a really amazing support system. And also just like I'm starting to find the joy in it, because I think ownership is something that's essential to forward motion.
Ownership of your career, ownership of your art, ownership of your...
I have ownership of my art, and I write and produce it, so I feel ownership of it creatively. But I think my life for a little while didn't feel like mine. That there was a schedule every day of like what I was going to do that day, and like there was somebody traveling with me at all times who knew where I was, so I didn't like freak out and run away.
Right.
There's another song on the record about that. It's called "Back in My Body," and each verse kind of chronicles like another city I was in having wild panic attacks.
So what do you do? What do you do to? You seem, I don't want to use the word better, but you seem like you've gotten somewhere with it. What did you do?
I think the thing with all of it is that through the craziness, I never had any doubts about the music. The music I have always loved and been so sure of. And at the same time of all this like craziness happening, I'd get on stage and have the most incredible shows and feel this really intense connection with fans. And you don't get to choose your fans, but every time I meet someone who's into my music, I always sort of feel like we would all be at the same house party. Like I feel so overwhelmed and really grateful if my music has somehow done this job in the world of like hand delivering everyone I would possibly be friends with. Like it's kind of curated like-minded people for me. So anytime I get to speak to somebody who my music resonates with, I always am like, yep, we would totally like go grab a beer. The music is what has kept me through this whole thing, and it's why I ever wanted to do this in the first place, or why I studied music. It's just like it makes me happier and more alive than anything else on the entire planet.
So these are the things you need to keep in mind on your 18-hour press day. That feels like it's not about that performance.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like, and this was a big surprise to me, is my job as a professional musician ended up being like 25% music. But that's kind of like any job, like It can't always be the good stuff.
Nope.
But the good stuff does keep me in it.
Unless you really love digging a hole, like your favorite thing in the world to do is digging a hole, and then you get to wake up in the morning and go out and dig
some holes?
Yeah, dig a hole all day, and then you get to go home.
Someone called Shia LaBeouf for the remake.
I don't even know what that means.
That was a niche reference to Holes, the film from 2008.
Where all the holes are in the ground. Yeah, I understand. I just meant, if you're going to go out and dig a hole, that's your job to do. I mean, you got to pick up the shovel.
I wish I could remember the song in that soundtrack that he sings, but all my millennial friends out there will know what I'm talking about.
I think I remember. Well, how old was I when Holes came out?
Will someone check me that it's 2008?
2008. So I was 21. No, I was just a little too old for Holes with Shia LaBeouf. I'll tell you that much. Though he does a really good hammered dulcimer cover of a 98 Degrees song, which I really...
I'm trying to remember.
2003.
Oh.
So I should remember.
Sorry, I was way off.
I should remember Holes with Shia LaBeouf.
I was in the 3rd grade.
Back to what I was saying. I wasn't born yet. Back to what I was saying. You're right. Any job you do, like I love this thing right now we're doing.
Yeah, me too.
Best part of my day, by far.
Yeah, mine too.
Nice to talk to someone like you, but there's a lot of leading up to this. There's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff you got to do in order to be able to have these moments.
Yeah, but I think that's what this record is about so much for me, is like the record, it goes, well, it's also about like being able to have these conversations, right? Because so often I was just doing interviews where I would talk about Pharrell Williams and this like crazy Cinderella story that was my life.
Right.
Of like girl gets plucked from obscurity. But the reality was so much more intense. And putting this record out feels like everyone is finally caught up to speed. And it just makes me so much more excited about like what I'm going to make next, because it feels like I now have have told the story in full of what that period of time was like for me. And now that we're all like are seeing eye to eye about like what actually happened when I was just like thrust into the public eye, I feel like I have the real opportunity for the first time to be myself.
So now, given that, when you, I mean, we've already established that these songs aren't yours anymore and they belong to others, but I have to imagine that when you're on stage and you sing Alaska, like you sing the songs that were representative of you being plucked from obscurity by Pharrell Williams, or the songs that were representative of this media thing of this young woman from college, you know, blowing everyone's minds. When you're on stage now as who you are now, I mean, do you feel like that person when you sing them? Does that feel like a different person?
No, Alaska specifically really doesn't feel like mine at all. But even it's like the version people first heard of it, I wasn't done with. You know, Alaska really never belonged to me. But
so how do you feel singing it?
I think that's the coolest thing about getting to play every night is, especially now, because I'm coming around to like, I guess like 3 or 4 years since those songs were written. 3. My life has made an entire life set, like done a complete backflip. So I'm coming around to this place where like old songs like Alaska or Dog Years are starting to find completely new meaning in my life. And I'm thinking about different people when I'm singing them now, or maybe I'm just thinking about the person in the front row who seems to be like having an amazing time. And because I think being a musician, you know, sometimes it's personal therapy and sometimes it's public service.
That's so interesting.
I mean, it at the end of the day is like kind of feels like the most amount of good I can do in the world. But it also is completely essential to me understanding the world at all.
Well, it's beautiful music, and I can definitely hear on this from the songs. I've only heard the songs that are out, but I definitely feel like I'm getting a window into your world, especially with Light On. I feel like you're saying something pretty confessional to me, and I do appreciate it.
Oh,
you'd be forgiven for writing a song about, you know, how much you like grass or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, grass is cool, but I don't know if that's my vibe.
No, I don't think it is.
Thank you, though. I appreciate that.
Hey, before I let you go, can I just ask a selfish question?
Yeah.
What's it like doing SNL? Is that a...
It's really, really cool. I walked in and started, like, crying, first of all.
Right.
Just because, like, the energy in that room is insane. And just, like, to walk in and see my band, like, setting up and sound checking on that stage is crazy.
And when you do the performance, does it feel like a show? Can you see the audience?
It feels like a show because there's like sets flying everywhere and like you're getting walked to stage in between sets moving and all this crazy stuff. But that actually is the most interesting thing because you do a dress rehearsal just before with a completely different audience.
Yeah.
And the only difference between the dress rehearsal and the live thing is one light on a camera goes on. I swear.
Right, the
red light goes
red
on,
on-air light,
but it doesn't even say on air. It's just like a little red light goes on, and suddenly it's live.
And do you feel that? Are you?
I think it's palpable in the room because everybody has this like energy and giddiness about it being live, but like also like yes and no. And I think at a certain point you kind of just have to let go. And I'm always performing, trying to connect to the people directly in front of me because I want to have a connection.
Yeah.
And I want to have an experience, and it's like totally a two-way street. I think the craziest thing about, first of all, I haven't watched either of the SNL performances I did.
Oh, they're very good.
Thank you. They live in my head right now, and they don't live in anyone else's. And I really don't want to mess that up. I learned this about the Pharrell video. I really don't want to like mess that up by watching myself watch it. Do you know what I mean?
Sort of.
Like right now when I think about it, the view, what I think about is the view from the stage. I can't see myself in that memory.
I understand.
But if if I watch it, then I can see myself. But this really crazy, the Light On performance was cool, but this really crazy thing happened during the Falling Water performance where I kind of forgot everyone was in the room. And I had some like major personal shift. Like, I don't know, I can't tell you what it is yet. I've spent the last month kind of like unpacking that one moment. But it's sort of like, I actually cried talking about the I'm sorry, I guess I cry a lot, but I cried talking about this in an interview the other day because I think it actually was the moment where I started saying goodbye to the record.
To this record we're talking about
Yeah, because it was like starting to be real that I was going to like put it out and tell people all these confessional things. But also, in the middle of the Falling Water performance, I think like I started making space for the person I was becoming. And I also think it was the first time. I think it was the first time I started taking ownership for any of this, because I think in the way that my career started so much like outside of my control, that I haven't really like celebrated any of it or like been like, I did this, because I never felt that way. And standing on the SNL stage playing this song that I love so much and I'm so proud of, felt like the first moment where I felt and saw myself in it and started to see myself in a future in it.
Well, I'll tell you, I know you're not going to watch it.
I might at some point.
But-
Rostam and I both agreed not to.
Rostam Batmanglij.
Yeah.
He was here not that long ago.
Oh, I love Rostam.
Lovely guy.
Little Rusty.
If you don't see it anytime soon, I will tell you, and this is true. I thought the Falling Water performance. I mean, I liked the first performance too.
Yeah.
But the Falling Water performance, I really did see that as like the real highlight of the two songs
Yeah,
for me.
me too. There was something
So
that
maybe I saw something there that.
Well, there was something that went wrong in Light On. Like, my ears didn't work for the first, like, verse.
Right.
And they clicked in on the chorus, and I thought it was fine.
How scary!
like,
Live on Saturday Night Live, and your monitors
and you,
aren't
like,
working.
Can't hear.
Oh.
And I was just, like, trying to keep a straight face and freaking out. And then eventually I was like, this is how this is going to go. Like, no worth freaking out. It's over now. Like, just enjoy it. And then, like, luckily on the chorus, whatever got sorted, and I could hear again. But
Right.
I was so frustrated afterwards because I sing that song every night, and it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, so for the one time for it to just like come on. But I actually think it was really important that that happened, because I think me being kind of mad about Light On or like a little disappointed, like feeling like I could have done better, was the one thing that really charged Falling Water.
You got something to prove in Falling Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. You should have pulled an Ashley Simpson. You know, done the backing tracks and just did a jig when you got caught.
It's one option.
Yeah.
I prefer the live performance aspect, but let's not bring up Ashley Simpson and hate on her.
No, of course
Let's
not.
please, if we're going to bring up Ashley Simpson, let's just acknowledge that Pieces of Me is one of the best pop songs of the last 20 years.
That's a great chorus in that song.
On a Monday, I was waiting. On a Tuesday. That song is...
What's the chorus?
Oh, my head on something real. And just the way I feel.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
pieces,
song. Pieces
of me. I can hear you guys out there saying, Tom, can you stop singing? Can we just get a clean?
No, I just want to
Can we
sing
get a clean
together.
Maggie on that? Can we just get a clean Maggie on Ashley Simpson's cover so we can add some backing tracks and make some money?
Yo, I might cover that on my own. It's such a good song.
Listen, when you do it, I want 10% of your Ashley Simpson acoustic
All
Hamburg Dulcimer
right,
cover
maybe 7.
on Spotify's acoustic playlist. Maggie, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you.
You too.